There is a hill in southern Turkey where hunter-gatherers carved 50-ton pillars, arranged them into rings, and decorated them with foxes, vultures, and scorpions. Then, for reasons no one understands, they buried the entire complex under tons of earth. It is called Göbekli Tepe. It is around 12,000 years old. That makes it 7,000 years older than the pyramids and 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It was built by people who had no pottery, no metal tools, and no writing. And the more archaeologists dig, the harder it becomes to explain how it exists at all. On a plateau in southern Peru, there are drawings in the desert so large that you cannot see what they are from the ground. A hummingbird the length of a football field. A monkey with a spiraled tail. Straight lines that run for kilometers without deviating. In 2024, an artificial intelligence system trained by Yamagata University and IBM found 303 new ones in under a year, roughly doubling the total known to exist. And we still cannot say for certain who they were meant for, because the people who made them left no explanation, and they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. In Lebanon, beneath a Roman temple, there are 3 limestone blocks so large that modern engineering struggles to explain how anyone moved them. Each one weighs around 1,000 tons. Nearby, still lying in the quarry, is an even bigger block that weighs an estimated 1,200 tons, the largest stone ever cut by human hands in the ancient world. It was carved and then abandoned. To this day, there is no crane on Earth in common use that could lift it. Off the coast of Japan, under the waves near Yonaguni Island, there is a formation with flat terraces, sharp 90-degree angles, and what look like steps. A marine geologist who spent decades studying it believes human beings shaped it. Other scientists insist it is entirely natural. After nearly 40 years of diving, measuring, and arguing, the honest answer is still the same one that connects everything in this video. We do not know. This is our countdown of 12 ancient sites that scientists still cannot fully explain. Stay until the end, because number 1 is that hill in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, and what it did to the timeline of human history is something archaeology is still trying to recover from. Before we start, drop a comment telling us where you are watching from right now. We want to see how many countries this video reaches. Number 12. The Stone Spheres of Costa Rica, the Diquís Delta. In the 1930s, workers for the United Fruit Company were clearing dense jungle in southern Costa Rica when they began uncovering something strange in the soil. Stone balls, not roughly rounded rocks, but near-perfect spheres, some of them over 2 meters across and weighing more than 16 tons. Local stories about the spheres had circulated for generations, and some were dynamited by treasure hunters who believed gold was hidden inside. There was no gold. There was only more stone, carved into a shape so precise it seemed impossible for a culture without metal tools. The first serious study came from Doris Stone, the daughter of a United Fruit executive who later became director of the National Museum of Costa Rica. In 1943, she published her findings in the peer-reviewed journal American Antiquity, bringing the spheres to the attention of scholars around the world. The details only deepened the mystery. Many of the spheres were shaped from gabbro, a hard igneous rock, quarried from sources that in some cases lay more than 50 kilometers away. They were made by the Diquís people, most likely between around 800 and 1500 years ago, using nothing but stone tools, patience, and a technique that has never been fully reconstructed. The archaeologist John Hoops, one of the leading experts on the spheres, has been careful to separate fact from fantasy. There are no records of alien involvement and no lost super-civilization, but there are also no written records from the Diquís at all. So the central question, why a people would invest thousands of hours shaping perfect stone globes, remains open. Part of what makes the spheres so difficult is that so many of them were moved before anyone thought to study them. Farmers rolled smaller ones into gardens. Some ended up as lawn ornaments outside government buildings. By the time archaeologists arrived to record their original positions, much of the pattern had already been destroyed. And with it, perhaps, the very clue that would have told us what the arrangement meant. What survives suggests they were sometimes grouped in deliberate lines and clusters near important homes, hinting at markers of status, astronomy, or social order. But every one of those ideas is an inference, built on the handful of spheres still sitting where they were left. The spheres are real, the precision is verified, the purpose is not. Number 11. The Yonaguni Monument, Okinawa, Japan. In 1986, a diver named Kihachiro Aratake was searching for a good spot to observe hammerhead sharks off the southern tip of Japan when he swam over something that stopped him cold. Beneath him, 25 meters down, was a massive stepped structure of stone, with flat terraces and edges that met at sharp angles. For a culture that grew up on legends of sunken lands, the discovery was electric. Here, apparently, was a drowned monument. But almost immediately, scientists split into two camps, and they have never come back together. On one side stood Masaki Kimura, a respected marine geologist who worked with the University of the Ryukyus and studied the site for over 2 decades. Kimura argued the formation was too regular to be an accident. He mapped its terraces, identified what he interpreted as steps, a possible road, and even tool marks, and concluded that human beings shaped a natural rock outcrop into a monument, perhaps thousands of years ago, when sea levels were lower and the site was dry land. On the other side stood geologists who pointed out that the local sandstone naturally fractures along straight, parallel planes, producing flat faces and right angles without any human help. To them, Yonaguni is a beautiful accident of geology, and nothing more. Neither the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs nor the Okinawa prefectural government recognizes it as a man-made cultural site. There is a middle position too, and it may be the most interesting of all. Some researchers accept that the core formation is natural, but suspect that ancient people, finding this strange stepped shape in shallow water when the sea was lower, may have modified and used it, adding to what nature began. If that is true, Yonaguni would be neither purely natural nor purely built, but something in between, a place where geology and human hands are impossible to separate. The problem is that the sea has risen more than 20 meters since the last ice age, and any softer evidence of human activity, wood, bone, ordinary tools, would have been scattered or dissolved long ago. Both sides have credentials. Both sides have evidence. And the ocean which drowned whatever answer exists is not giving it back. Number 10. The Longyou Caves, Zhejiang Province, China. On the 9th of June, 1992, a farmer named Wu Anai decided to pump the water out of a pond in his village that locals had always called bottomless. He wanted to see what was at the bottom. What he found was not a pond floor. It was the roof of an enormous man-made chamber, hidden underwater for centuries. As more ponds were drained, 24 caves emerged, hand-carved into solid siltstone, covering an area of roughly 30,000 square meters. The walls rise dozens of meters, the ceilings are supported by pillars, and every surface is covered in fine, parallel chisel marks arranged in a deliberate decorative pattern. The scale is staggering. Engineers estimate that carving the complex would have removed close to 1 million cubic meters of stone. That is an amount of labor comparable to a major public monument, work that would have taken thousands of people an enormous length of time. And here is the part that no one can explain. The caves are believed to be at least 2,000 years old. Yet in a country obsessed with keeping written records, in a region with continuous historical documentation, there is not a single mention of them. No record of who ordered the work. No record of the thousands of laborers who must have done it. No record of what the caves were for. The precision is what unsettles the experts most. The chisel marks are astonishingly uniform, running in neat parallel bands across walls and ceilings, and the separate caverns were carved so close to one another that in places only a wall, less than a meter thick, divides them. Yet none of those walls has collapsed. To cut so near a neighboring chamber in near total darkness, without ever breaking through by accident, implies planning tools and a knowledge of the rock that we cannot account for 2,000 years ago. Scientists from archaeology, engineering, architecture, and geology have all examined the site. Theories range from a royal tomb to an imperial storehouse to a hidden barracks to a quarry whose stone was carried away and used elsewhere. On the essential questions, who built the Longyou Caves and why, they agree on the same conclusion: they do not know. Number 9. The underground city of Derinkuyu, Cappadocia, Turkey. In 1963, a man in the town of Derinkuyu was renovating his home when he knocked down a wall in his basement. Behind it was a room he had never seen. Behind that room was a passage, and behind the passage was a city carved downward into the earth that could shelter as many as 20,000 people. Derinkuyu descends roughly 76 meters, the height of an 18-story building turned upside down and buried in volcanic rock. It has 18 recorded levels. It contained everything a population needs to survive underground for extended periods. Stables for animals, wine and oil presses, kitchens with ventilation, chapels, schools, wells, and a network of air shafts that still carry fresh air to the lowest floors today. The engineering is defensive and deliberate. Massive circular stone doors, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, could be rolled across the corridors from the inside and locked in place, sealing the city against anyone trying to force their way down. The soft volcanic tuff of Cappadocia is easy to carve and hardens on contact with air, which helps explain how the digging was possible. But it does not explain the scale or the intent. Derinkuyu is only one of over 200 underground complexes in the region, and some appear to connect to each other through kilometers of tunnel. Some researchers trace its earliest tunnels back to the Phrygians, nearly 3,000 years ago or even earlier, with each later culture, Persian, Byzantine, and others, expanding and adapting it to hide from invading armies. Whole communities could disappear underground with their livestock and food, roll the stone doors shut, and simply wait for danger to pass overhead. There is even a striking theory that the deep design was shaped in part to survive harsh climate, keeping a stable temperature year-round far below the surface. Who first began carving this city, and which threat was so severe that 20,000 people needed to vanish beneath the ground to escape it, remains a question archaeologists are still debating. And since only a fraction has been excavated, the true depth of Derinkuyu may still be unknown. Number 8. The Nazca Lines, southern Peru. Across roughly 450 square kilometers of desert, ancient people scraped away the dark surface stones to reveal the pale ground beneath, creating enormous figures and lines. There are animals, plants, geometric shapes, and dead straight lines running for kilometers. The largest figures stretch longer than a football field, and nearly all of them can only be recognized properly from high above. For decades, the person most associated with the lines was Maria Riesch, a German-born mathematician who spent much of her life mapping them and documenting their geometric precision, often sleeping in the desert to protect them. She believed the plateau formed a vast, deliberate ceremonial landscape. In 2024, technology confirmed how much we had been missing. Researchers from Yamagata University's Nazca Institute, working with IBM, trained an artificial intelligence system on thousands of high-resolution images. In less than a year, it identified 303 previously unknown figures, roughly doubling the known total. The findings were published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The Nazca people made these images somewhere between around 500 BC and 500 AD. The techniques are understood, The lines are so shallow and the desert so still that they have survived for 2,000 years. What is not understood is the purpose. Were they paths for ritual processions, messages to gods in the sky, a giant astronomical calendar? Every theory has supporters. None has won. There is one detail that keeps the mystery alive. Many of the straight lines and the animal figures were made in a single continuous stroke, a line that never crosses itself, as if it were meant to be walked from beginning to end, without ever lifting your foot. That has led some to argue the figures were not images to be looked at, but paths to be traveled, ritual routes for people moving in procession across the desert. If so, the Nazca did not build pictures for the gods to see. They built roads for the living to walk while the gods watched. It is a beautiful idea. It is also, like every other explanation, unproven. The lines are real. The scale is verified. The reason a people would draw pictures only the sky could read is not. If you are still watching, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Take 1 second to hit subscribe and tell us in the comments which site so far has surprised you the most. Now, the second half of this list is where the stones get truly enormous. Number 7. The Moai of Easter Island, Rapa Nui. On one of the most remote inhabited islands on Earth, the Rapa Nui people carved nearly 1,000 giant human figures from volcanic rock. Many weigh over 10 tons. Some weigh more than 80. They were carved at a quarry inside an extinct crater and then somehow moved across kilometers of rough terrain to platforms along the coast, without wheels, without draft animals, and without metal. For centuries, this was one of archaeology's great puzzles. How do you move an 80-ton statue across an island using only human muscle? Some assumed the islanders dragged them flat on wooden sleds, stripping the island of trees in the process. But the Rapa Nui oral traditions always said something stranger. They said the statues walked. In recent years, that claim has been tested and, remarkably, supported. Researchers built a nearly 4.5-ton replica and, using only ropes and a small team, rocked it forward step by step. A team of 18 people moved the statue 100 meters in about 40 minutes. New physics and modeling studies, along with the discovery of specially shaped roads with a gentle curve ideal for stabilizing an upright, rocking statue, suggest the Moai really were engineered to move standing up, leaning forward, wobbling toward the sea. The transport mystery may finally be closing, but the deeper questions remain. There is the matter of the unfinished statues still lying in the quarry, one of them so large, at around 20 meters, that had it ever been raised, it would have dwarfed everything else on the island. There is the question of the pukao, the multi-ton red stone top-knots that were somehow lifted onto the heads of statues already standing. And there is the haunting story of the society itself, which, at some point, stopped carving and toppled many of its own Moai face down. Why a small, isolated population poured so much of its life into these 1,000 stone giants and then turned against them are questions still being pieced together. Number 6. Stonehenge, Salisbury Plain, England. It is one of the most studied ancient monuments on the planet, and it still holds secrets. The great outer sarsen stones came from around 25 kilometers away, which is difficult enough for stones weighing up to 25 tons. But it is the smaller stones that keep rewriting the story. The so-called blue stones, the inner ring, were traced to the Preseli Hills in Wales, more than 200 kilometers from Stonehenge. Neolithic people 5,000 years ago somehow transported multi-ton stones that distance by land, by sea, or both. Then, in 2024, the story got stranger. A study published in the journal Nature, involving researchers from Aberystwyth University, University College London, Curtin University, and the University of Adelaide, analysed the chemistry and mineral grains of the central altar stone. They concluded, with 95% confidence, that it did not come from Wales at all. It came from northeast Scotland, around 700 kilometers away. Think about what that means. 5,000 years ago, without the wheel in common use in Britain, without metal tools, a 6-ton slab of sandstone was moved the length of the entire island, most likely by sea. The researchers themselves noted that such a journey implies organized, long-distance marine transport across Neolithic Britain, a level of coordination that reshapes how we picture these people. And the altar stone was not even the end of it. That same research overturned decades of assumption in a single stroke, because scholars had long believed the altar stone, like its neighbors, came from Wales. It did not. If the people of Neolithic Britain could organize the movement of a 6-ton stone across hundreds of kilometers of water and land, coordinating labor, boats, and provisions over a journey that may have taken months, then our picture of them as scattered, primitive farmers is simply wrong. They were connected, ambitious, and capable of feats of logistics we are only beginning to credit them with. We know more about Stonehenge every year, and every year it asks a harder question. Number 5. Sacsayhuamán, above Cusco, Peru. On a hill overlooking the old Inca capital stand 3 great terraced walls built from stones so large and fitted so tightly that they remain one of the enduring puzzles of pre-Columbian engineering. Some of the individual blocks weigh well over 100 tons, and a few are estimated at more than 300. What astonishes visitors is not just the size, but the fit. The stones are irregular, many-sided, and locked together with such precision that, famously, you cannot slide a sheet of paper into the joints. There is no mortar. The blocks were shaped to fit their specific neighbors, corner rounded to corner, in a jigsaw of stone that has survived centuries of earthquakes. Many researchers believe the inward lean of the walls and the interlocking design actually help the structure ride out seismic shocks that flatten modern buildings. The Inca built it in the 15th century, under the Emperor Pachacuti and his successors, and yet they had no iron tools, no wheels for transport, and no large draft animals. Experimental archaeology has shown that shaping and fitting the stones was achievable with immense skill, stone hammers, and possibly heating and rapid cooling to fracture rock. Moving 300-ton blocks up a hill with ropes, ramps, and manpower is another matter entirely. There is also the strange fact of the name and the scale. When Spanish conquerors arrived in the 16th century, they were so awed by Sacsayhuamán that they wrote it could not have been built by men, but by demons. They then used it as a quarry, tearing down the smaller, more portable stones to build colonial Cusco below. What remains standing today is largely the stones that were simply too big to move, which is a humbling thought. The most impressive walls we can still see are the ones the Spanish gave up on. The originals may have been greater still. The walls stand. The precision is measurable. Exactly how a society without iron or the wheel achieved, this is a question engineers are still working on today. Number 4. The Trilithon of Baalbek, Lebanon. Beneath the ruins of a colossal Roman temple to Jupiter lie 3 of the largest building blocks ever placed by human beings. Together, they are called the Trilithon. Each stone is around 19 meters long and weighs in the region of 1,000 tons. And they were not left at ground level. They were lifted and set into a wall, several meters up, fitted so tightly against one another that a knife blade cannot pass between them. To grasp the scale, a single one of these blocks weighs roughly as much as 3 fully loaded jumbo jets. And the Romans, master engineers though they were, moved 3 of them and placed them with extraordinary accuracy. It gets stranger in the quarry nearby. There, still attached to the bedrock, lie even larger stones that were cut but never moved. One, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs around 1,000 tons. Another, rediscovered in the 1990s, is estimated at about 1,240 tons, making it the largest worked monolith known from the ancient world. Archaeologists believe it was abandoned, because a flaw in the stone risked cracking it during transport. To put the challenge in modern terms, the heaviest land-based cranes built today can lift loads in this range only under carefully controlled conditions on level ground, with counterweights, hydraulics, and steel. The Romans had wooden scaffolding, rope, human and animal muscle, and the lever and the capstan. And yet the Trilithon is not lying in a field. It is set precisely into a wall, meters above the ground, level and true. Engineers have proposed systems of earthen ramps, timber cradles, and hundreds or even thousands of workers turning capstans in unison. The proposals are plausible. What no one has done is fully reconstruct the feat. Mainstream scholarship credits Roman engineering, and there is good evidence the Romans were responsible. But the practical question of exactly how they raised 1,000-ton blocks and set them into a wall with such precision, using the technology of 2,000 years ago, is one that continues to generate serious debate among engineers and historians. Number 3. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt. It is the most famous ancient structure on Earth, and after more than 4,500 years, it still refuses to fully give up its secrets. We can talk endlessly about its 2+ million blocks and its original height of over 146 meters. But the detail that quietly astonishes engineers is the alignment. The Great Pyramid is oriented to true north with an accuracy better than 4 minutes of arc, that is, better than 1/15 of a single degree. In practical terms, that is a precision of roughly 1 millimeter per meter. It is aligned more accurately to the cardinal directions than many modern buildings, and it was done without a compass, without GPS, and without any instrument we would recognize today. How the builders achieved this remains genuinely unsettled. The Egyptologist Kate Spence proposed they used 2 stars, lining up Kochab and Mizar to find true north at night. Another researcher argues the secret was far simpler: the shadow of a rod tracked across the ground on the day of the autumn equinox. Each method can produce the observed accuracy. Each has its defenders. But as scientists studying the problem have repeatedly admitted, the Egyptians left almost no clues about which technique they actually used. They built something breathtakingly precise, and then said nothing about how. And the alignment is only the beginning of the precision problem. The 4 base sides are very nearly equal in length, differing by only a handful of centimeters across distances of more than 230 meters. The base is almost perfectly level. The whole structure, containing over 2 million blocks and rising to the height of a 40-story building, was assembled by a civilization without iron tools, without pulleys as we know them, and without a single written manual describing how the job was done. Egyptologists have made real progress on the logistics, uncovering worker villages, records of labor gangs, and even a papyrus diary describing the transport of casing stone by boat. We now know it was built by skilled, well-fed Egyptian workers, not slaves and not visitors from the sky. But knowing who built it is not the same as knowing exactly how they hit such tolerances. The pyramid stands. The alignment is measurable to the fraction of a degree. The method is still, after centuries of study, an open question. Number 2. Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, Bolivia. Nearly 4,000 meters up on the high Andean plateau, near Lake Titicaca, lie the shattered remains of a structure that looks less like ancient masonry and more like the output of a machine. Pumapunku is part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, and carbon dating of the site points to construction around 14 to 1500 years ago, roughly 5 to 600 AD. The famous H-blocks are what stop people in their tracks. They are cut with sharp interior angles, flat faces, and repeating geometric patterns so consistent that many blocks appear interchangeable, as if mass-produced. They interlock like enormous pieces of a set, fitting together with recesses and channels that suggest a deliberate, modular system of construction. Some of the surviving andesite and sandstone blocks weigh many tons, hauled to a treeless plateau where there were no large trees for rollers and no draft animals capable of the work. For years, this precision fueled claims of lost technology, but careful archaeology has offered a grounded answer. The Tiwanaku used metal clamps, T-shaped and I-shaped fasteners, made from copper arsenic bronze, poured into carved channels to lock the blocks together. Experimental work has shown that the astonishing precision, though extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming, was achievable with skill, stone tools, and abrasives. Even with that grounded explanation, Pumapunku keeps its power to unsettle. The site sits almost 4,000 meters above sea level in thin, cold air where physical labor is punishing and crops barely grow. Tiwanaku was, for a time, one of the great cities of the ancient Americas, home to tens of thousands of people sustained by ingenious raised field farming around Lake Titicaca. And then, somewhere around 1,000 years ago, it fell. The fields were abandoned, the city emptied, and the extraordinary stoneworking knowledge that shaped the H-blocks vanished with it. So completely that when the Inca arrived centuries later, they too found Pumapunku already in ruins and wove it into their own myths of creation. So the how is slowly being answered, the why is not. We still do not fully understand the purpose of Pumapunku, the beliefs it served, or why the civilization that built this remarkable place declined and left it in ruins. And that brings us to number 1. Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt visited a low hill that earlier surveys had dismissed as a medieval cemetery. Schmidt looked at the same fragments of stone and saw something no one had allowed themselves to imagine. He began excavating the following year and led the work until his death in 2014. What he uncovered rewrote the story of human civilization. Buried in the hill were massive T-shaped pillars, some over 5 meters tall and weighing many tons, arranged into great circular enclosures. They were carved in relief with a bestiary of wild animals: foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures. And the dating was almost impossible to accept. The structures were around 12,000 years old. Understand what that number means. Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years. It predates the pyramids of Giza by around 7,000. It was raised before pottery, before metal, before the wheel, before writing, and, crucially, before farming. It was built by hunter-gatherers. That single fact broke a rule scholars had treated as settled. The accepted story was that humans first learned to farm, then settled into villages, then grew rich enough to build temples and religion. Göbekli Tepe reverses the order. Here were nomadic hunter-gatherers organizing hundreds of people to quarry, carve, and raise 50-ton pillars for reasons that appear to be ceremonial, thousands of years before agriculture. Some researchers now wonder whether the urge to build gathering places like this is what pushed humans toward farming in the first place, and not the other way around. And then there is the final mystery. At some point, the builders deliberately buried the whole complex, packing it with rubble and earth, which is the very reason it survived so well. No one knows why they entombed the thing they had worked so hard to create. Consider what building it would have required. To quarry a 50-ton pillar from bedrock using stone tools, to shape it, to carve delicate animal reliefs into its surface, and then to move it and raise it upright, demands not just muscle but organization. It means hundreds of people working together, and it means feeding them. Before agriculture, that food had to be hunted and gathered. Some archaeologists believe the sheer effort of gathering enough wild grain to feed the builders may have been one of the first steps toward deliberately planting it, which would mean that monuments like this did not come after civilization. They may have helped cause it. Klaus Schmidt spent the rest of his life excavating the site, and he estimated that only a small fraction of it has been uncovered. Ground surveys suggest many more enclosures still lie beneath the hill, untouched. Most of Göbekli Tepe is still underground, still waiting. It is the oldest known monumental site of its kind. Its age is verified by carbon dating, and what it truly meant to the people who raised it and then buried it is something we genuinely do not know. So, there they are. 12 places scattered across the world and across thousands of years, each holding a question that all our science has not fully closed. Perfect stone spheres in a Costa Rican jungle, shaped by a people who left no writing. A stepped formation drowned off Japan that we cannot even agree is man-made. A vast carved city beneath a Chinese village that history somehow forgot to record. An underground world in Turkey deep enough to hide 20,000 people. Giant drawings in the Peruvian desert meant only for the sky. 1,000-year-old statues that walked to the sea. A Scottish stone hauled the length of Britain 5,000 years ago. Andean walls no paper can penetrate. 1,000-ton blocks raised at Baalbek. A pyramid aligned to the stars within a fraction of a degree. Machine-like precision on a Bolivian plateau. And a hill in Turkey that pushed the story of civilization back by thousands of years and then was buried on purpose. The deeper archaeologists dig, the less certain the neat, official timeline becomes. These are not proof of aliens or lost super-civilizations. They are something more humbling. They are proof that ancient people were capable of far more than we once believed, and that our ancestors still have the power to surprise us. Which of these 12 sites left you most unsettled? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more journeys into the places that science still cannot fully explain, subscribe and stay with us. The past is not finished with us yet.